All right, everybody, welcome back to coverage here of the U.S. Regional Championship. My name is Corey Ballmeister, and I am joined by none other than Brian Braun-Duin. BBD, how you doing, my man?
Still doing great, Corey. Still got more Magic to be played.
Yeah, we got some good stuff to be played here. So first, let's take a look at the standings of these players and check who is dominating. No tournament leader. Our tournament leader, Mac Endress, ended up losing this round, BBD.
Yeah, no undefeated players anymore. A lot more think everyone's kind of in the mix again.
Yeah.
So yeah, this gonna be a tough battle to the end.
Yeah, and looking at some of the big names here, we have 6 players at X and 1 already. That is quite impressive. And they're in 7th place. Our only undefeated player, I guess, Jody Keith there at 902 on that mono white martyr. But wow, what a diverse top 8 there. There is 3 Golgari Yawgmoth decks, but outside of that, every deck is a one of. I mean, I love Modern. That is just such a welcoming sight, as well as our tournament favorite, I would think, at this point. Matt Nass did pick up a loss. They're going to 9-2. But let's
Yeah,
take a
and
look. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say that that's I don't want to say on the ropes, but for getting a top 8, you're kind of in that spot at 9-2 where you probably can't pick up any more losses. But you're still live for that PT invite, even if you do.
Yeah, you're looking at this top 16 players and maybe a couple more as really the only players that can still win this tournament, that can still make the top 8 of this event. So, you're looking at one of the winners of this U.S. Regional Championship almost assuredly, which is pretty exciting. So, let's dive into our match here because we have a battle of the boomer decks here, BBD. I could not be more excited for this match. First, tell us a little about Kevin Long's Golgari Midrange deck.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like just a classic rock deck. It does include the like grief scam with Not Dead After All,
Yeah.
but beyond that, it's just kind of a traditional mid range deck that's almost replacing the red cards from the Rakdos deck with these Golgari cards instead. And notably, our boy Tarmogoyf is one of
Oh
them.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, what this has to be like the only 4 Tarmogoyfs that are at the top tables, you would think, right, BBD?
Yeah, you would think that, but maybe you could find a copy or two here or there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe in the sideboard or something, right?
yeah, modern has really fallen away from this kind of like Tarmogoyf magic, and it is cool to still see, you know, these boomery magic cards have a chance to perform.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really exciting. So let's check out Kevin Long's opponent here. And we have a little jut. BBD, is that 4 more Tarmogoyfs?
Indeed, it is. And with Fable of the Mirror
Ooh.
Breaker, sometimes it can be even more.
Yeah, okay, all right. This is the Boomer deck meets the Zoomer deck here, as we have, Unholy Heat. We have Fable the Mirror Breaker, as well as Urza's Saga, some of the more common played cards here in the metagame. But wow, this is just as much of a mid range slogfest as we can really see. So I'm super excited. This match is probably going to take an hour and a half, and I'm here for it. So let's get on to the battlefield and see these 2 players battle it out with their Tarmogoyfs. We got Kevin Long on the left and Dylan on the right here. Both players 9-2 at that sweet spot you said where, you know what? No more losing is really allowed. And looking at our bottom image there, I see a 6 and a 5 for the dice. So Dylan starting off with a multi 5, unfortunately, with Kevin's only multi 6.
Yeah, neither of these players are beating the 45% against the field allegation if you're not keeping 7 cards.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding here. So, how much does that affect this style of matchups? Because there's sometimes when you're playing Amulet or something, mulliganing doesn't matter that much. But is it pretty bad in these mid-range battles?
I think the first mulligan is fine. If you have to go down to 5, it starts to get a little bit tricky. But one element of these kinds of decks these days is so many cards can generate such a powerful amount of value on their own. For example, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, that it is not insurmountable to overcome some of these like deficits.
Yeah, and we see Thoughtseize take Thoughtseize. Are you surprised by that at all with leaving Renin 6 on the battlefield, or not so much?
I think it depends on what Kevin has as a follow up here, and I think Dothy makes it make quite a bit of sense
Yeah,
because generally you take Thoughtseize with your Thoughtseize if you want to protect your own hand, and you only really want to protect your own hand if you have some powerful cards that kind of matter in the matchup, not just generic good cards. So I think that anytime you see a Thoughtseize taking a Thoughtseize, you're expecting that your opponent's probably going to have a pretty good hand.
yeah, and probably going to have a nice play right away. So here is the Surveil land, kept it on top. So, I mean, that's Golgari Guildgate, pretty much, right?
Yeah, didn't get to draw an extra card as they say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your Surveil lands are either literally draw a card or they're guild gates, but I'm here for it still.
I'm here for the Guildgate side.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
wrong with just an actual guild gate.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. Blood Crypt taking 2, and you have the ability to play Ren, but instead drew Unholy Heat. So dealing with that Dothy. And we also have the Stone of Eric in play. And now that card really is just a tutor for Urza Saga, but it actually ends up being pretty nice in this matchup as your opponent cannot do the whole grief style of scam thing with that in play.
Right. It shuts down the like more powerful like grief scam stuff. You can still just cast the card grief at 4 mana, but
My God, Dylan is popping off here. Land 3, which is exactly what he wanted, but also it's Saga with no Dothy on the battlefield, so Ren and 6 can get that value going of Urza Saga, pretty much continually. You got to put a huge advantage to Dylan in this matchup here.
yeah, I mean that was a great sequence of events for Dylan. Like we were discussing, do you take Ren and 6 or Thoughtseize with the Thoughtseize? Ren and 6 just still hasn't been played.
Just the worst card out of all the cards that Dylan has access to right now. Ooh, and another Golgari Guild. Nope, never mind. This one. Oh no, that did go on top. So we got another Golgari Guildgate here, BBD.
Yeah, 4 mana, probably going to see something like Sheoldred or
I
possibly just even a hardcast grief.
Yeah, I think there were 2 griefs in hands as Kevin's last 2 cards, if I saw correctly. So gonna be able to deal with the Ren, which is still very huge. Okay, looks like a Maelstrom Pulse as well. I mean, we're all familiar with that one if you used to play Magic in the 2010s.
And I think that Maelstrom Pulse is going to come in handy here if Dylan ends up going the like making construct route with the saga.
Yeah, totally agree. So here comes in the Shaman getting a treasure token for the Troubles. Pretty cool treasure token. But has the Fatal Push. Makes sense why Dylan did not discard that one. Wow. How incredible is now able to make a Saga token. Um, but hold up. We got a Tarmogoyf.
Hey, there we go. We're back. We're back.
Dang. I mean, it's got to be just gigantic at this point, right?
I don't know if it's that huge, and there's also that Stone of Eric in play. So maybe not the best show. Look, the next Tarmogoyf will be better, right? Like,
Hey,
yeah.
don't you dare even consider bad mouthing Tarmogoyf on this stream, okay? I can sense it in your tone, BBD, and I will not stand for it.
I'm hedging right now, Corey. I'm playing
Okay.
both sides, so I always come out on top.
Wow, wow. You're still once a gamer, always a gamer, it would seem.
Yep.
All right, so here we go. We have the reflection flipped as well as Urza Saga going to chapter 3. Here's another construct. Now, this saga is going to go get us something spicy here. Anything that stands out to you, BBD?
Yeah, I think you don't really. I mean, you have the stone in play already, so now you're looking at probably something like a Shadow Spear, which can be a really powerful card in a lot of these grindier things, or you might get the research desk and refuel from a point of low resources.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the ultimate mid-range battle, you get the ultimate mid-range cards, and that is a dirtily card like Mishra's Workshop, or excuse me, Mishra's Research Desk. Pretty sweet card, I must say.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say Mishra's Workshop is that dirtily, but
Yeah, okay. Chat's probably losing it at that point. Be like, Corey, get out, because that is, of course, a very powerful card. Now, one thing that Dylan does have available, if it wasn't for this Maelstrom Pulse, is throwing more constructs at Kevin with that reflection of Kiki Jiki. And this Maelstrom Pulse is actually just going to be incredibly powerful.
yep.
Boom.
Yeah, that really shut down the giant board state that Dylan has, but Dylan still has a really strong position with this flipped Fable and the ability to see more cards with the research desk and the ability to even get more mana with the goblin if need be. Like there's so many draws that Dylan can find that just really swing this game.
I totally agree. And yeah, I think Tarmogoyf is just at an unmanageable power already with that Saga in the yard as well. Saga, Planeswalker, Sorcery, Instant, Land, Creature. Should be 6, right?
And notably, the thing about Tarmogoyf is Dylan's deck is so heavily designed around how powerful it can get Tarmogoyf, but when your opponent's also playing the Goyfs,
Man, it's just unreal. So we
yeah.
see the end step Mishra's Research Desk activation. It does work that way where it's the end of your next turn. And here we go, another Saga to be able to get that token out there. Oh, the artifact to the yard might be the 6 there, but I mean 2 mana 6/7. How did Goyf ever fall off? It's so good.
It's hard to imagine. It really is.
Yeah.
Mistakes were collectively made.
I think so. So there's the shaman coming in, get one of those really cool treasure tokens, and here is a stomping ground, leading me to believe we're gonna do some construct making, maybe some Gigantha buying, as well as leaving 3 mana open, I guess, for the Stone of Eric.
Yeah, I think looking to have 3 mana so you always have access to using that the backside of Fable to copy a creature as well as also having the stone available as well.
Yeah, hold on a second, BBD. Didn't we play that Urza Saga this turn as well? I don't know if we can halt this match, but I think that was a second land play.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, with the nature of this, everyone watching at home, these are slightly pre-recorded as we, skip sideboarding and stuff like that. So I don't think this is going to be possible to fix. So, yeah, I think we'll just have to move on from that. But yeah, you can't do that.
Ends up getting the Gigantha out of the hand, which is not bad. I mean, it's good. Both of these griefs kind of got decent value.
Yeah. And realistically, that extra land is not going to make the most drastic of change here. It might have actually been bad for Dylan because Dylan did take 2 with that stomping ground. So not necessarily ideal.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge impact.
That's a big impact, though. That'll be collapsing that Tarmogoyf here and really swaying the game here, as that copy is still hanging around as Reflection did bring this into play at end step.
Yeah, and these treasure tokens are going to be huge, like combined with those constructs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is probably too much to handle here. Dylan decides to get both shamans in and will lose both shamans as it goes to end step. But there's going to be a much better target for that reflection, and it's going to be this construct at end step. You got to think Kevin needs a big draw step, and big draw step was drawn here as the one ring comes down, gives protection. So Kevin's not going to lose immediately. And I didn't think I'd say these words on the broadcast this weekend, BBD, but man, do we need a second Maelstrom Pulse.
Just wait till we need the third Maelstrom Pulse.
Oh, God. And it's not in the deck where it's like, wow, if only Kevin Long played the third Maelstrom Pulse in 2024.
Yeah, this is this kind of situation where, you kind of do like a post-game think to yourself and you're like, Man, this is why I needed that third Maelstrom Pulse in my deck.
Yeah, exactly. The key Maelstrom Pulse. So looks like they are deciding if it's going to 2 or 3. It has to be going to 3 because there's already a construct.
Well,
No, that doesn't seem right. It should be allowed
that
to make
doesn't
a
seem right to me
construct.
as well. Looks like I think they're going to get it fixed.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. They're just double checking. And, don't be afraid to call a judge in these scenarios. There we go. Construct number 2. So we're going to get a Saga. Now, what other spicy cards do we have here? There's no main deck Pithing Needle for the One Ring. There's Haywire Might, though. That's pretty good.
That is quite good. Yeah.
Oh. Wow. Okay. So Haywire Might coming into play.
It's not going to allow for a lethal attack here, but it is going to kind of shut down probably Kevin's key element to getting back into the game.
Yep, I would totally agree. And there is Shadow Sphere and a pass of the turn. Kevin needs another big draw step, and it's another One Ring. The flavor is failed, but the game is still alive here as the One Ring is exactly what Kevin needs.
Tarmogoyf. That's huge.
Wow, that is a Punisher for sure. As punishment, just came down to clean up every single one of these artifacts. Wow.
I think Dylan might be like, those series of draws was a crime.
Yeah, I think so. I would think so.
Is it time to put Shadow Spear on
The old reflection?
and get in for 3 damage?
Well, not this turn. I wouldn't recommend it with the protection, but
Oh, you're
it's
right.
getting close.
Yeah.
It's getting close.
We're getting close though. That's good clean magic.
This has been a very swingy game. So at the beginning, it looked like Dylan, was diabolic tutoring every single turn and just drawing absolute perfects. But wait a minute.
Wow, the rarely used mode of Shadow Spear.
Oh, I was like, how does that work? But it does still allow you to destroy that, doesn't it? Right?
I believe so, yeah. And Drew agreed to get rid of Jagantha for the second time as well.
That is incredible. All right, this is good old fashioned wholesome magic if I've ever seen it.
I love how all these one Urza Saga tutor targets are coming in big, not because the multiple Urza Sagas found them. They were just drawn and ended up being relevant.
Yeah, because of course,
amazing.
All the constructs died to some of the most popular interaction of the format, Maelstrom Pulse and Punishment. And now we might see a copied Tarmogoyf attacking for 14 here if Kevin doesn't find yet another amazing draw step. Fatal Push, maybe?
Yeah, there's running thin here at this point.
Wow. Okay, so nothing right now. You would think if Kevin has a push or something, you wouldn't really wait, right?
Actually, I think there is an interest in waiting because you would actually, I mean, there's more risk in waiting there, but you do bait out and ruin the activation of the reflection. So I do think that there is some value in trying when you're playing from behind like that, trying to get a little bit of a bigger play instead of the safer play.
All right, here we go. We have 15 points of Tarmogoyf damage coming into play. Anybody who's just watching this stream and just listening to it, their ears just perked up, and you better come back to the broadcast and watch this sweet mid-range action. There it is, a Thoughtseize off the top, and the game finally goes to Dylan. We're going to check with production to see if we can just get these two players to play a best of like 15 or so, just so we can watch this kind of sweet magic over and over. You down for a BBD?
Yeah, one game for every amount of Tarmogoyf power that was attacking on that last turn.
Yeah, I'm in for that. Absolutely. So we'll get this game ready to go, and we'll head down to the battlefield whenever we are ready. But from the Golgari mid-range sides, what kind of more mid-rangey cards are you bringing in this matchup? And I guess same with the Jund Sagavan. I'm kind of taking a quick glimpse, BVD, and it looks like there's a lot of cards for other matchups here, not necessarily for these kind of mid-range slogfests.
Yeah, like you're if you're playing a deck like this in this tournament, you're not expecting to play against, a mirror match, not a direct mirror, but a similar, a thematic mirror match. So
Yeah.
most of your sideboard is going to be aimed at the rest of the format. So generally speaking, in these kinds of mid-range matchups, the way to win after board is to go even more mid-rangey, to lean in even harder.
BVD,
So
how do they lean in even harder though?
I don't know if I don't think either of these deck lists really have those kinds of tools, but in general, it's going to be cards like these, like kind of grindy value type cards like Kolaghan's Command and so forth. But I'm not
Or
seeing a
like
lot
an
in.
Emrakul or something, something to go way over the top.
Yeah, if in a format where these decks are like top decks that are, or top played decks, I should say, that's where you might start finding some like specific haymakers.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when it's a situation like this, where it's not a matchup that you've built your sideboard around, then it's just like, can I get a little bit of value here or there
Yeah.
by maybe
Totally.
upgrading a card or two from my main deck?
And here's an interesting scenario here where there's two different exile zones, one with the Dothy counter, one without. So you got to keep them straight. Nothing confusing about that.
That's very straightforward. That's Tarmogoyf magic. Clean and
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf is not going to be swole this game so far if this Dothy Voidwalker sticks around. And with that Unholy Heat not being selected from Dylan and the land being found, I think that would scream a couple things to me. Number one, you need the lands. And number two, you probably have the removal spell already.
I would agree with both of those statements.
And there is the interaction with Unholy Heat. As it is damage based, it will still go under with a Void counter on for future Dothies. Fatal Push, it would go to the graveyard. Always an interaction that I call a judge for every single time to this day.
Yeah, I think at this point in time, I think a little bit of a slower game like this favors Dylan, because I feel like Dylan has more threats in his deck.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, it's kind of under Kevin a little bit to, put at least some pressure on Dylan before these cards like Saga can take over a game.
Yeah, Renin 6 and Urza's Saga, I think, is the form of inevitability here from this Jund deck. So I would give the advantage to Dylan for the late game for sure. And, the ceiling on Kevin's deck is just so much higher. But I think the floor is a lot lower as well. And what I mean by that is just like the best possible draw you can have is so much better than the best possible draw Dylan can have. But you can have these really mopey draws, and I think the main aspect of that is getting the grief not dead after all on turn one. That can completely sway this matchup.
Yeah, it absolutely can. And yeah, like you look at Dylan's deck and it's all these cards that generate so much advantage. And
Mm-hmm.
Kevin's deck is a lot more based around, kind of similar to like the normal Rakdos decks, where you're more based around how proactive you are at disrupting your opponent. So that I think that is a pretty key element of these two decks even going up against each other.
Yeah, this deck really just screams out to me. I've played against this Golgari Midrange deck on Magic Online quite a few times, and it just really screams to me that, like, okay, I want to play this Rakdos Evoke strategy, but Regavan is not very good right now in a Bowmaster Renin 6 world, so it's just basically, do I want to play Fable the Mirror Breaker, or do I want to play Tarmogoyf? And, I kind of like the decision to play Goyf right now. We joke about the card quite a bit, but in reality, the one thing that's not really being dealt to Rhinos players is they're never really having to worry about bigger creatures blocking. It's you worry about EEs, you worry about chalices, you worry about all the stuff that prevents the Rhinos from coming into play. Once they come into play, you just assume you have the bigger creature. Then Tarmogoyf, looks and says, not so fast, as it ends up being a very, very big creature in those matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can, in some situations, it's not, I'm not saying this is easy to do, but you can sometimes beat the Rhinos deck by just outclassing Rhinos in combat.
Yeah, which feels wrong, right? Like 4/4s, are just gigantic in Modern already. So it is kind of wild to do that. And looking at the deck list here from Kevin, we were sweating those one rings and stuff. And now I'm looking, there were only 2 one rings. So that made those top decks even more sweet.
Yeah, there's the 1 ring and there's the 2 ring. No, nothing
Yeah.
past that point. One thing I will say about this Golgari deck is that it certainly looks like it loses a little bit of potency in the format if that Sign of Draco Rhinos deck catches on.
Oh God.
This level of, like you were saying, like Tarmogoyf outclasses Rhinos in combat and so forth, that loses some power when Sign of Draco is providing 5 combat abilities.
So you would say Tarmogoyf is not as good when your opponent has a creature that is flying, first strike, trample, hexproof, and vigilance?
Yeah, but especially if it's also lifelink.
Ah, okay, yeah, of course, of course. I knew I was forgetting one keyword there. Dang it, I was so close. All right, so there
So
we see
got rid of the
landing.
Bowmaster, which allows the 1 ring to get a little bit more, or not be as painful, I should say.
And with a 2 mana being held up, I think Kevin's really debating: do I Grief now to take your Bowmaster, or do I one ring first and hope you don't have a Bowmaster? And chose wrong. Probably.
Yeah, that is a really difficult choice. It's like, do I play the card in my hand that I don't really want to be my play for turn
Yeah.
and risk having it be kind of a more suboptimal turn? Or do I make the play that plays around the worst case scenario?
That being said, I did think I saw a crime and punishment as well. So punishment for 2 is a nice clean answer to this, but still having to take 3 damage from this Orcish Bowmaster, plus the fact that the one ring is going to do some damage, could be brutal. But yeah, it looks like crime and punishment and Maelstrom Pulse, so has the option to do either. And punishment does work that way, right? If it's X equals 2, it would have wrath the board.
I'm not sure. It's been a hot minute since I've seen Crime and Punishment.
Oh,
But
yeah, it is not converted mana cost of X or less. It's just converted mana cost. So yeah, punishment not very good here. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's been a while since I've seen that one as well.
yeah, I mean, this is an interesting like situation where Kevin definitely has the advantage. I mean, he's seen so many more cards, drawn so many more cards, but his life total is under serious pressure. And one aspect of these kinds of mid-range versus mid-range type matchups is knowing like what role you're supposed to take in each game at each part of the game. So
Yeah.
now Dylan, while he normally maybe would have been able to play a little bit more of a powerful reactive game, having more card advantage elements in his deck against Kevin, now is on the losing side of the card advantage and has to kind of pivot towards trying to close the game out.
Yeah, totally agree. God, now looking at this one ring from Kevin's side, like it's not looking great. I was gonna say, except if we find a Sheoldred to start gaining some life. I think this is the game right here. If Dylan can remove that Sheoldred in response, I think it's GG. If not, Kevin's gonna go up to 12 life here.
Yeah,
Oof.
that was a pivotal play for both sides of this matchup, and I think that was a great play by Kevin, kind of identifying that like while he has all these resources, he is still not necessarily really winning this game and needed that kind of like power boost of undoing the damage from the one ring, buffering his life total a little bit.
Yep, totally agreed. Just to the point there where, what we were talking about earlier, you can't play around stuff that you can't beat. So like it might have been the situation, well, okay, if my opponent has a removal spell for Sheoldred, I can't beat it. If my opponent has Bowmaster number 3, I can't beat it. So be it. Play the powerful card and hope for the best here. And now all of a sudden, if Dylan doesn't have, something unbeatable like a Maelstrom Pulse of his own, then all of a sudden, Kevin's just going to run away with this one ring Sheoldred interaction.
Yeah, the Sheoldred is kind of going to just take over or even end the game. without like some piece of interaction. So it is really coming down to Dylan needs to draw something that can kill Sheoldred, and that's kind of the core point, like pain point for both players in this match right now is how is the Sheoldred going to stay on the board?
Yep, totally agree. You see the Elvish Reclaimer at end step getting rid of a land to get Urza's Saga. That's pretty spicy. Maybe we've seen Elvish Reclaimer that's getting some other kind of weird lands in like Legacy or something, but kind of the first we see of it in Modern.
Yeah, and just a powerful effect. It's not something that we see that often, but it is still a powerful effect, and it is a fine mid-rangey card because it can just be a decent sized creature in and of itself as well.
Yep, totally agree. 1 mana 3/4, not bad. 2 mana 6/7, that's where it's at, but not terrible.
Yes, I mean it's half the price, half the action, right?
Yeah, there we go. Nothing can beat a good old supercharged Tarmogoyf, that's for sure. So big things for Dylan here. I think every fan of Dylan definitely going for this match for Dylan to come back and win this one. But I think absolutely everybody else in the world wants to see a third game from here. Maybe including myself. Sorry, Dylan.
I just want to see Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we might get to see it. So here we go, Elvish Reclaimer sacrificing a stomping ground. Now, what kind of spice are we getting now? Why do this right away?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is some play in mind here.
Yep, gotta submit there first.
Yeah, the mid, the Allosaurus rider is scrying right there.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we got
Or
Golgari
surveilling rather.
Golgari Guildgate, or it's literally draw a card. We're gonna find out. All right, drew a card.
Oh, there and it becomes clear the fatal push. That was a great play.
That was a great play. So had to trigger revolt, got that done, and now this reclaimer supercharged in can attack for a little bit extra damage.
I think it's 3 damage, and the big point here is I actually think that surveil put the third land into the graveyard.
Oh
So
my.
you know what? You can miss me with the it counts as drawing an extra card, but you can get me with it counts as +2/+2.
So it was a green black card that said when it came into play, draw a card, give a creature +2/+2. Wow. Power creep on Golgari Guildgate has gotten out of control.
It has.
Whoa, endurance
Oh,
here. Whoa, get that out of there. Okay, take 1 instead. Kevin goes to 10. And when you got a ring at 3 and you have to find ways to get rid of your own ring, when we look at decks like 4-color Omnath that play to fairy or Omnath to gain life or something like that, it's rather trivial to get the ring off the battlefield. But, I think in a deck like Golgari Midrange, the flavor of this card is just absolutely perfect because, well, you are tempted to draw 4 cards, but you're losing 4. Be like, now I am tempted to draw 5, but you lose 5. Like it becomes a real cost in this deck when you don't have that many ways to actually take it off the battlefield.
yeah, it absolutely does. And I actually love that play of endurance. It seems like Kevin is throwing away so much value by pitching 2 cards just to save 2 points of life, but he's accumulating equally as much value with how many cards he draws that I think it like that is a heads up play to say like I need to preserve my life. My life total is more relevant than any of these cards are.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, whenever you're drawing 6 cards a turn, I'm pretty okay throwing away a couple here to save some life total swings. And all right, here we go again. That Sheoldred and the One Ring interaction. Not the proper order, but of course it was drawn off the One Ring, so you're not able to gain 8 life along with it. But here we go. Here's the draw step of Force of Vigor to just deal with 1 permanent. It looks like.
Yeah, and I think the idea here is going to be maybe trying to force Dylan into committing to this without getting a huge payout out of it.
Yeah, and it's like, what is the one card that you could go get as far as a target? There is no Pithing Needle in Dylan's list to like shut down the One Ring, which kind of seems like there maybe should be, right? That seems like a nice one of. But other than that, you could get a Soul Guide Lantern, you could get a Shadow Sphere, Stone of Eric, Haywire Might, and then Research Desk.
Yeah, and I think stopping the Urza Saga, like right now, this game is about Sheoldred,
Yeah.
so you want to stop any aspect that Dylan has that lets him see extra cards or gets anywhere closer to any piece of removal to take the Sheoldred off the board.
Yeah, that's
Because
fair.
if Kevin does get to untap with Sheoldred, I don't want to say the game is completely over, but it feels over for sure.
Yeah. Kind of a cute interaction when you get Urza Saga in your upkeep. You go to your draw step and it still does level up. That's kind of cool. All right. And is it a removal spell? It is not. It's only the best card in the format, but I don't know if it's going to be enough here up against the One Ring, putting Kevin to 5, but then the One Ring can put Kevin up to 15 and, only have about 47 cards to work with here, BBD.
Yeah, and now it's starting to get too far to come back from. I mean, you have to assume Kevin has found probably at least one, if not like 5 pieces of removal for that Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, really pick your poison on this. And pick your poison was just too much. These players are having a good time here. I would be too if you're playing a Tarmogoyf mirror. And yeah, I want to remind everyone at home of these extremely high stakes these players are playing for. They're 9-2. That is still in top 8 contention. This could be one of the players that would make it to the world championship here. But BBD, it's still really exciting to see players enjoying their time, playing Magic, because sometimes you can, and I'm sure you have, gotten lost in the moment a little bit and maybe not enjoyed these moments as much as just considered them work.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like, I've never looked back and said, like, I regret having too much fun playing Magic. I have looked back and said, I regret how seriously sometimes I took things that didn't need to be taken that seriously. So, seeing players really, I mean, this is such a cool matchup to have, and seeing them actually enjoying the swinginess of it is great to see, especially with the stakes involved.
Yeah, you gotta love it, especially seeing a younger player like Dylan playing this kind of boomerish style deck that Kevin is playing, but with some of these more new additions here. It's nice to see that this style of Magic is not being lost with our youth. That's for sure.
That's right. The kids are all right, Yeah.
Yep, I'm here for it. Dylan's all right in my book, that's for sure. So here we go. Bloodstained Mire being fetched to go down to 16 or down to 17 at least. And these Surveil lands look really good in this Gen deck as well, for what it's worth, as well as the Golgari deck. Both great additions. I'm guessing Dylan's playing the 2, both green red and green black, and they've looked awesome.
Yeah, they have. And
Wow, I was playing 3, even red black. There we go.
yeah, I feel like these lands in these kinds of decks where you don't necessarily have to spend every piece of mana every turn,
Mhm.
it's going to be contextual. You're in a lot of ways you do have proactive elements, but you also have all these pieces of interaction, and sometimes that dictates how you're spending your mana. It is totally legit to kind of take the tempo off of having to play a land um, that comes into play tapped, but gaining the extra value from it.
So this is what the whole quote unquote scam mechanic is, right? It's flashing in an endurance, right? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people complain about the old endurance scam.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we got rid of Fury. That was annoying to have for turn 1, but I am just so sick of being on the draw and my opponent double endurance as me. I've had enough of it.
When I lose my first fetch land like that, I mean, it's a table flipping moment for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
up the beanstalk, all right with me. Endurance, get this out of here. This is too good.
Not in my modern. Yeah,
I
I will
do
say
love.
that I will
Yeah,
say
go
that that
ahead.
was actually a really good play. Like
It
that
was
was
so sick.
it. It not only like countered the Ren activation, it also created a creature powerful enough to one shot the Ren. I mean, it was such a good line of play, but it is like really funny just the endurance scam.
It was completely broken, in my opinion. I mean, that was great. And I mean, being able to go with that combination on your opponent's turn, like Fury and Grief are just like looking longly at like, wow, instant speed, so cool.
Yeah, and notably, I will say that Dylan does have some countermeasures to this endurance scam. Has the Haywire Might that could take out the Wicked Roll.
Yes, and of course the best comment in chat, of course, 4-5 endurance, literally Siege Rhino. Gotta agree with you on that one.
Absolutely. It didn't drain 3 points of life, but it may have drained like 3 points of mental fortitude having to endure
100%.
that play.
Absolutely. Nice endurance pun there as well. So putting that catacombs to the yard, drawing a card, and Kevin not playing anything here, but Kevin's deck really does, fire off on all cylinders when you get to 4 mana. So easily could just be removal and 4 drops like the One Ring, Sheoldred, Grief, that kind of thing. But
Yeah,
there's Goyf.
there he is. Noticeably, a Tarmogoyf might be a little bit smaller than this endurance at this point. Does appear to be. But now that Haywire Might play actually, could be combat relevant at some point. I don't expect that play to be made. You're not hoping to get rid of something as small as that with the Haywire Might, but in the right context, it could be good.
I mean, yeah, it easily could happen, right? Because I mean, if you Haywire Might, you have a target, you
Yeah,
know?
you do a target. It grows the Tarmogoyf.
Yeah. And
It's
now with that
effectively a combat trick.
instant to the yard, I mean, if Kevin attacks here, I think it would be a train wreck for Kevin. So I think he's going to realize this is no good because you get rid of the Wicked Roll. Tarmogoyf becomes a 4-5 and eats the endurance. So boom, once again, Tarmogoyf reigns supreme.
Yeah, Tarmogoyf's still outclassing the rest of the creatures despite an endurance. It's heartwarming.
Yeah, these incarnations, that you helped design actually here when you were working on MH2, help modify these cards a little bit. Still can't stand up to a Tarmogoyf. So do you think that means you failed?
I think
Or do you
that
think
sounds like a success.
okay, that sounds like a success. Way to make some cool, fun cards that still fold to Tarmogoyf. You're the hero we really need. Not all heroes wear capes, BBD.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give credit to everyone else that was, more involved with that on a much more significant level than me. But
That's so modest. Our 2016 world champion is just modest and handsome. What a combination.
it's not as good as the combination of Haywire Might and Wicked Roll, though. Yeah.
All right, so here we go. Urza's Saga, going up to chapter 2 to be able to make some constructs.
And this is starting to look like the style of game where Dylan is favored. I mean, it looks a lot it's starting to look more like what the first game looked like, where Kevin does have access to a lot of really powerful answers, sometimes even 2-for-1s. But when the 2-for-1 threats, there's these 2-for-1 threats versus 2-for-1 answers, threats generally win out in that equation. Threats are better than answers throughout most of Magic.
Yeah, maybe Legacy being kind of that exception, where there's amazing answers, but I would agree
And
with you.
with that having been said,
A
that
great
is
answer.
that answer seemed to be a little bit better than those threats right there. So
Great job,
lesson learned.
BBD.
Yeah,
Great job. That's why they got us on the morning shift here when we'll bring in the heavy hitters to get it all right.
exactly.
Okay, here's a Nambo. We got the lantern coming down to get an instant out of the graveyard. I like Dylan's choice there to take a instant out of the yard instead of anything that would shrink the Goyf. Want to keep that going. And the one thing is, you know, Kevin's plays have been cool. They've been good interactive plays, but without the One Ring gaining an absurd amount of card advantage like we saw last game, look at what Dylan's going to do every single turn. Be like, looks at a land. Could this be better as an Urza Saga? If yes, it's an Urza Saga with the Reclaimer. And eventually, Constructs will win this game if Kevin's unable to do some great stuff.
Yeah, this seems like a clear situation of every card I draw is either a spell, which is good, or it's an Urza Saga, which is good.
Yep. So kept that on. Oh no, put the Goyf into the yard.
Which I
Through the
think
Goyf,
is,
there was no creature. You saw Dylan just slammed that dice. And here we go. There is a Sheoldred that gets slammed as well.
and I like the decision to not take the Tarmogoyf. It is impactful on the board as it stands right now, but that's not how you're going to win this game. You're losing that style of game to Dylan right now.
Yep.
You need to get back to that One Ring Sheoldred style of game. So any card that doesn't get you towards that point, I think, is a card that you're not interested in drawing from Kevin.
It feels like it should be a crime though to bin a Goyf when you can cast it.
And sadly there are no punishment though on finding the Sheoldred instead.
Is there any extra crime though
No
in doing
crime.
so? Okay. All right. No crime detected. So, with Dylan kind of thinking about this, we've seen Dylan act pretty fast, and rightfully so. You see a Tarmogoyf, you kill a Tarmogoyf. And attacking with this Tarmogoyf, if I was Kevin, this would scream from the heavens to me that, well, Sheoldred's alive, and now Kevin sees the writing on the wall, or now Dylan sees the writing on the wall that Sheoldred will take over as it does if I'm unable to get some damage in. So it looks like Dylan's going to shift gears and not go for the inevitability and look to start closing the game out, which I totally agree with. I think he has to do in the face of a Sheoldred. But that being said, there's a lot of fatal pushes. There's a lot of unholy heats to deal with Sheoldred pretty cleanly.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've really been impressed with both players in this match is understanding of role. Like I mentioned that before, but you know these players are both doing really well with these decks. They understand their decks and how they play,
Yeah.
and the shifting from which side of the matchup is supposed to be, you know, trying to push the aggression versus which side is playing a more reactive game. You know, it's not a static thing. It's not a dynamic. It is a dynamic thing that shifts as cards get drawn and played. And both players have seemed to fairly immediately understand when they need to, you know, try to preserve card advantage or try to push for more card advantage or play reactively or play aggressively and so forth.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that is a kind of a under appreciated skill that some of the greats have, that you have, that I think Javier Dominguez, is probably the one that comes to my mind right away as just being an incredible Magic player, is identifying whether or not you are the beatdown or you're not immediately. Because, like, if you ever have that area where you start attacking and actually this is not your game to be attacking anymore, you can just lose so fast with like one set of bad attacks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here is Shadow Sphere to probably attach to this Tarmogoyf. That enchantment went to the yard. I think there was already a Saga in the yard. So just seems like this is a 6-power lifelink creature as well as a 5/5 construct. Ooh, attacking with a 5/5 is kind of risky when you're tapped out, isn't it?
It is. It is a little risky. I think this could have been a spot where it was worth maybe sending in that Goblin Shaman token, so that you do have that treasure token to at least represent something like the Haywire Might, or you know, possibly some other effects as well.
Yeah, because if Kevin just had a fatal push there, right? You can just fatal push a construct, block the other one, and eat both of them. That was a little risky, but a good vibe there from Dylan, just saying, you know what? I can't beat a fatal push. That might be another scenario of just like, well, if you have it, you're gonna win the game.
Yep.
Interesting decision here with Takanuma to bring back either Endurance or Sheoldred #2. I mean, it's the card. So I would be a little more tempted by it than I think Kevin was, wouldn't you?
I would be tempted by it, but at the end of the day, Dylan is actually kind of assembling a board that is going to be capable of beating the Shieldred.
But it's still midday, like they're not at the end of the day yet. So do you think that changes your decision?
Oh yeah, I mean maybe a little bit.
Okay. So as it stands, there's the one Endurance in hand for Kevin. You see Sheoldred, or excuse me, Dothy Voidwalker come down, and then Maelstrom Pulse to get those constructs out of there.
Yeah,
And
that was a
Legion,
huge play right there. The constructs were the threat.
yeah, for sure. And Legion's End most notably does not get pointed at Sheoldred here. So looks like Dylan's had that laying around for a while. Just needed a target. And now there's no really big creature to put that Shadow Sphere to attack. But at some point, Dylan might have to chump attack with the Shadow Sphere creature to just stay alive, as this Sheoldred is just wreaking havoc on this game.
Yeah, it is. Sheoldred has actually completely taken over this game. I think it also took that Maelstrom Pulse to really like kind of get the door closed on it. But we've just seen how powerful Sheoldred can be, and even like for Dylan here, looking for answers for Sheoldred involves drawing more cards in some cases. It kind of pushes the clock on it as well. Like,
Yeah, boomer mid-range players are just together crying with Sheoldred, the new hot mid-range card, doing the work and the heavy lifting instead of Tarmogoyf. It's not fair.
it isn't fair,
No.
but life isn't fair.
That's true. That's true. Life lessons from BBD here in round 12 of the U.S. Regional Championship. Now we looks like we have one more Urza Saga as an option.
Yep.
But with Kevin at 12 and Dylan at 9, when do you start getting busy?
Yeah, it starts becoming dangerous. Like you are running out of time, and like you were saying before, it's getting close to being time for Shadow Spear to just kind of gain 3 life here, maybe even equip back as a blocker to gain 2 or 3 more life on the return blocks, just to buy more time to find a piece of removal. Because even though this Sheoldred has taken over the game, if Dylan does get it off the board, suddenly we go right back to like the game, kind of a similar game state to what we had before.
Yeah, so I mean, this Sheoldred attack, it could definitely, bite Kevin a little bit. As I think there's a couple options. One, you could block with all the creatures. Now that is 5 power, 6 power technically to deal with Sheoldred. With that endurance, you can shrink the Reclaimer.
Yep.
But on the crackback, like if this Reclaimer just, or even the Shaman equips to the Shadow Sphere and attacks, like I guess there's still the endurance to jump in and block here, so it is kind of safe. But oh no, BBD! You see that dice in the top of our screen? That can only mean one thing.
And what does that mean?
We're in turns.
Oh wow, okay.
Oh, so that is
That
turn
makes that
two.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense then. Like once we're in turns, Magic changes a little bit. Sometimes it's less about trying to play for a long game and more about making sure I don't die in the next 2 turns, or making sure that if I'm ahead, that I can win specifically the next 2 turns.
Yeah, and man, you got to feel for these players because X2-1 in the US Regional Championship in Atlanta was not a clean cut. Those players, some of them did miss. So these players might be drawing themselves out of the top 8, but if it came down to it, sometimes you have those moments where you're like, wow, I have 100 power on the battlefield. You have 1 Birds of Paradise or something. Would you concede? You get to some of those scenarios, but at this stage of the US Regional Championship where there's still Pro Tour invites on the line, I don't think it would be correct for either player at any board state to actually do that and scoop to the other one.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you could think of it as like, this game ended in a draw. I mean, I'm not saying that it necessarily will. There is still turns left to be played, and just accept that was the result of the game. That is something, draws just do happen in Magic. So.
Yep. And as we talk about this Tarmogoyf mirror, of course, one of our fellow friends here comes in with a big old raid. Jim Davis, thank you for the big raid here. Heard 2 Tarmogoyfs were battling against each other and had to come watch the action. We get it.
And came back to see a Sheoldred instead. Sad times.
Dang it. Dang it. So, all right. So this is still turn number 2. And what are we seeing here? Just construct main phase, equip with Shadow Sphere. You can see Dylan's mantra here is stay alive. And Kevin is the one who is on the aggression here and is going to try to win this game in any fashion. Fatal push.
I think that might
top.
be game right there. That's 6 damage plus the Sheoldred triggers 2 more damage.
Yeah, and
And it
that's
looks like that
it.
is.
Wow, what a match here. Kevin Long able to pick this up in turn 3 of extra turns. That is for sure, without a doubt, my favorite match of the weekend. There is nothing like a good old mid-range battle that ends in turns where both players really, it could have went either way, BBD.
Yeah, there were so many swings, not only throughout the match, but throughout each individual game as well. That was just a really fun, entertaining. That's good. That's magic as Richard Garfield intended, right? So
Yes.
yeah, that's just some good, clean magic right there.
Yeah, and I'm getting word, unfortunately, we can't watch that match again. These players do have to get ready for their next round. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to take a break and we're going to have to settle for another backup feature match instead of another mid-range battle. So, we are going to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. More magic on the other side.